In this Nioh 3 beginner guide, I'm going to be teaching you everything you need to know to begin your time-traveling journey through ancient Japanese mythos. As you can expect from a Team Ninja title, Nioh 3 is an incredibly complex game with numerous systems and mechanics that can overwhelm you completely as a new player. Regardless of whether you've played a Nioh title before or not, this guide will provide you a good foundation covering every single major system that you need to use. Since this is a very long beginner guide, I've put chapters in the video description so you can find topics that are specifically important to you, but I do recommend watching the full video to save yourself a lot of confusion on your first playthrough, as tutorials can sometimes be lackluster. To start, let's go over the pure basics of combat. You'll have your white health bar in the center of the screen and a blue bar beneath it, which is your ki bar. Ki is your stamina, which is consumed when you sprint or jump, attack enemies, or block or dodge. If your ki is reduced to 0 and you are hit, you enter a staggered state where you cannot move until half your ki meter is restored. This applies to all enemies you face as well, and attacking enemies will reduce their ki meter and their total max ki. If you reduce a basic enemy's ki meter to 0, it will leave them in a staggered state and open to a grapple, a critical hit dealing huge damage. Stronger enemies, however, will need their max ki bar to be reduced to 0 to be grappled, not their ki meter, but will stagger with every hit when their ki meter is at 0. This is an important distinction, and the sooner you understand this, the better your combat will go. The core combat of Nioh 3 revolves around the new feature of swapping between samurai and ninja styles. You'll equip a different weapon for each one of these, and you can tailor the styles to your liking as you progress through the game. For those of you who have played Nioh before, samurai style is your typical Nioh combat experience. Your equipped weapon will have 3 different stances, low, medium, and high. You can swap between these on the fly, with each providing different attack patterns and skills which allow you to adapt to any enemy or boss. You'll primarily be using this style for head-on combat, as it has much less mobility than Ninja's style, and has higher equip load for wearing heavier armors. Attacking enemies and guarding while in this style will fill a gauge on the bottom right called the Arts gauge. While it's active, your next martial art or strong attack will be enhanced. Martial arts are essentially skills, which we'll get into in a second, but just know that you can combo multiple attacks into one use of the Arts gauge, so try making super long combos to make the most out of one gauge use. Additionally, you also have a built-in parry called Deflect in Samurai mode. Pressing L1 or LB right before getting hit completely negates all damage, restoring your ki and charges your resource gauges. More on that later. If you just hold down L1 or LB, you'll guard enemy attacks, which doesn't negate elemental damage and consumes ki. One last incredibly important key factor that you must learn using this mode is ki pulsing. After you perform any attacks in samurai form, a red bar covering a portion of your spent ki will appear and fill up once you stop attacking. If you press R1 or RB when the meter is full, you'll execute a perfect ki pulse, which recovers almost all the ki you spent instantly. If you are a new player, I can't stress how important it is to build this muscle memory for ki pulsing after every attack chain, so you can keep combos going and stop enemy attacks from exhausting you. A good tip on this is to wait for the blue lights around your character for the timing so you don't actually have to look at your ki meter and can keep your eyes focused on your enemy. Another element of combat is that enemies can also spawn a Yokai Realm. This manifests as a puddle of shadows on the floor, and while standing on it, your ki restoration will be reduced. Doing a ki pulse while inside the realm will purify it, removing the realm and possibly giving you buffs depending on the build you have. Next, let's take a look at Ninja style. This style is incredibly nimble and has low ki consumption for any of your actions. The main objective of the Ninja style is getting behind enemies, as dealing damage from behind will double your damage output. To accommodate that, instead of a ki pulse, Ninja style has Mist, which quickly evades in any direction without consuming ki after using an attack. This means there is no way to recover ki in this form or purify Yokai Realms, but you'll be consuming less ki as a trade-off. The main gimmick of Ninja style is Ninjutsu. There are 3 Ninjutsu slots for you to slot in any Ninjutsu ability you can get from the Ninja skill tree. Attacking enemies fills all Ninjutsu gauges simultaneously, and you can slot some very useful items in here once you get the right skills. Swapping between these 2 styles on the fly is useful for fighting certain types of enemies. Sometimes you'll even end up behind an enemy, and swapping to Ninja style can give you bonus damage, and other times you have a charged art ready for some huge damage in Samurai style. It's up to you how to swap them, but I recommend using Ninja for kiting enemies you don't know how to fight, and Samurai for that consistent head-on damage. You'll sometimes be forced to swap when enemies use a burst attack. This is when they start glowing red and then attack. If you swap styles at the exact moment the attack connects, then you do a burst break, which massively reduces the enemy's max ki, and is a must to learn to overcome boss fights. Note that you can remap your controls so that you don't have to switch styles when performing a burst break. However, you will have to find another input for this button, and since there are so many to remember at the beginning of the game, this isn't recommended for new players. Moving on to the weapons, there are a total of 14 different weapon types in Nioh 3, split into 7 for Samurai style and 7 for Ninja style. For Samurai, you can choose between swords, dual swords, spears, axes, odachi, switchglaives, and cestises. For Ninja, there are Ninja swords, dual Ninja swords, kusarigama, tonfa, hatchets, split staves, and talons. Every weapon has their own skills unlocked from their respective martial arts trees, which you get points for as you progress the game in the forms of samurai locks and ninja locks. Martial arts are essentially new skills, combos, and passives for the weapons, which typically include the following inputs: flick up plus triangle, flick down plus triangle, heavy attack after light attack after heavy attack, hold light or heavy attack, and airborne attacks. These trees will usually have multiple skills using the same inputs, in which case you must pick and choose which skills you want to have equipped for those inputs in the customized menu. And it's also worth mentioning that since each stance can have its own inputs for samurai weapons, ninja weapons will only have a few inputs for martial arts, making them much less versatile. To give an example, the sword can have Kurama's sword dance as your up plus triangle on low stance, then heaven flash on your up plus triangle for high stance. But for the ninja sword, you cannot have both sky piercer and wagon kick since they are both up plus triangle, and you don't have stances in that style. To have adaptability to most situations in Nioh 3, you should be trying to make it so that your samurai playstyle fills in the gaps that your ninja style doesn't have. For example, an odachi plus split staff playstyle will give you the option of big and bulky damage or fast and nimble damage interchangeable almost instantaneously. Lastly, in this long, exhaustive list of your basic combat options, we have Guardian Spirit skills and Living Artifact. Your Guardian Spirit is an equipped spirit that gives you some special stats, Guardian skills, and a unique Living Artifact form. The Living Artifact gauge is essentially your super mode, with the gauge filled by Amrita as shown on the left of your health bar. Next to it are 1 and later on 2 Guardian Spirit skills, which heavily reduce an enemy's max ki, and can be used in many different ways depending on the ones you have equipped. To use the skills, you'll have to land attacks to generate Spirit Force, the divided yellow bar underneath your ki meter. These skills are actually incredibly useful for when you get staggered, as you can cancel your staggered animation with a Guardian skill to possibly get out of danger. However, don't use the skills sparingly to do so. The Spirit Force gauge charges surprisingly quickly, so you can spam Guardian skills quite often. Moving on from the basics of combat, we'll now talk about core stats. These were pretty confusing to me starting out since a lot has changed since the previous Nioh titles, but it's actually quite simple once you understand what's going on behind the screen. As you complete quests, kill enemies, and loot areas in the open world in Nioh 3, you'll gain Amrita, which is used to level your character up at shrines found throughout the map. There are 7 different stats you can level in Nioh 3. You can see what these are and what they do on the screen now. The way you want to distribute stats is to favor the stats that increase the damage of your chosen weapons. Every weapon type will have 3 different stats that scale favorably with it. For example, the sword can scale with heart, strength, or intellect, and the ninja sword scales with strength, skill, and intellect. The difference between these reference stats and typical Souls-like games or previous Nioh games is that all 3 stats are completely equal. There is no S scaling or B scaling for each stat. You can choose any of the 3 stats to max and get the same damage results regardless. For example, using a sword and leveling to 50 heart will give you the exact same damage as if you went 50 strength. This means that for most ideal builds, you want to have a samurai weapon and a ninja weapon that have at least 1 similar reference stat, preferably 2. However, there will be an option to change the reference stats of especially rare gear later on, so there is some flexibility here. To give some examples, the following are good combos that synergize well. Spear and Kusarigama, both scale with Constitution and Skill. Sword plus dual ninja swords, both scale with Heart and Intellect. Odachi and Split Staves, both scale with Strength and Magic. To give an example of a terrible combo, Spear and Split Stave have no synergy since they have no similar stats, unless you change them later on, which I mentioned you can do. The relevant reference stat with the highest value will be used for scaling, then the next highest reference stat will be used for minor scaling on any given weapon. So if you use the Odachi and Split Stave with 50 strength and 15 magic, you'll get major damage scaling from strength and slight scaling from magic. Having weapons with 2 common stats allows you to diversify your build's focus and get other stats rather than completely hardlining one. So in that example, you can get a little extra magic damage with your ki damage, or you can get a little extra ki damage with your magic damage. However, that being said, there are 2 stats that are practically mandatory to level, which are Constitution and Heart. Even if your weapon's chosen stats don't align with Constitution and Heart, you'll have to invest some points into them, since they are just base increases to your life and stamina. I recommend going up to 20 or 25 in both Constitution and Heart at a maximum for builds not centered around them, as you will see diminishing returns with more levels at around that point. Then with the rest of your levels, you can pump all the points into your main stat and have your secondary stat at maybe 15 or 20. It's obviously not an exact science for any min-maxers out there, especially considering that you can change reference stats later, but this is the simplest strategy which I have found works best for beginners making an early build. Later on, you'll also need to take into consideration stat requirements for armor sets and for Onmyo magic, which we'll discuss later. But do note that you can reset all of your stats whenever you want with absolutely no fees, so you can feel free to experiment with playstyles and min-max without worry of being locked into your leveling choices. Moving on to equipment. Basic equipment in Nioh 3 is divided into a few categories: samurai weapons, ninja weapons, ranged weapons, head, torso, arm, leg, and foot armor, samurai accessories, ninja accessories, usable items, spirit guardians, and soul cores. For the first region of the game, the warring states, you'll be fine using the new auto-equip function from the equipment menu as you get used to all the other mechanics of the game. This will auto-equip the highest attack weapon of the same type you have equipped, and your highest defense armor for a specific agility. Agility determines your ki consumption when attacking and dodging, so getting at least C is a must. Once you get to the end of warring states or the next era, then you should really start looking for sets or stats on pieces of armor or gear which accommodate your build. Every piece of equipment will come in either white, yellow, blue, or purple, which denote common, uncommon, rare, and epic respectively. With higher rarity equipment, you'll get both better stats on your equipment and more stats. Keep a lookout for any epic equipment with a star on it, as this means it will have a specially enhanced random stat, and also look out for plus values on weapons, which we'll go into later. Good armor stats to look out for that generally work for any build are plus life, anything ki related, life recovery from Amrita, spirit skill buffs, and base defense. For weapons, base attack, any elemental imbuement, and most plus damage buffs. The imbuements make a massive difference, so make sure you keep your imbuement drops. Later on, you want to build around specific imbuements by pairing them with natural elements of your chosen weapon found in the martial arts tree, and by getting bonuses centered around those elements. In terms of accessories, if you're a completionist, try to get a prayer beads for an Amrita sensor, which shows all nearby Amrita on the minimap while exploring. For the rest of the stats, unless they are specifically targeted to your playstyle preference, try to avoid overly specific stats such as life recovery on soul core gained, since you won't get a lot of value from them. If you find an accessory that rolled great stats but is low level, it may be worth it just to use it, since level mainly affects defense and accessories don't provide much of it anyway. Next on equipment, let's go over the Blacksmith and how you should be utilizing them. There is a set inventory space limit of 2,000 before items start disappearing or going to the storehouse, so you'll have to either sell your equipment at a Sudama, offer it at a shrine, or dismantle it at a blacksmith. Dismantling is usually the best choice since you can get crafting materials to forge your own gear later on in the game. As for what you should dismantle, anything 30 levels lower than you that isn't epic or part of a set can be safely considered trash. You'll have to go through your inventory and lock at least one piece of every set with this logic, however, since there isn't any filter to exclude set pieces as of the first patch. There is another dismantle option for gear called Soul Extraction, which gives you yellow or azure soul cores depending on if you dismantle normal gear or plus value gear. These are materials used for soul matching. Select level in soul matching is simply the process of increasing the level of gear. If you have something, for example, that you really like but it's under-leveled, you can bring it back into use by using this system. Select plus value in soul matching can be used to turn any epic equipment into plus value equipment, or level any plus value equipment to a higher plus value. Higher plus values will give massive bonuses to attack or defense, which can offset a level difference easily. There's one additional benefit to plus value equipment, which is the remodeling system. Remodeling allows you to change the reference stats of any plus value item, making builds completely flexible. So take that example from earlier, a spear plus split stave build. These two weapons have 0 common reference stats, but by remodeling one, you can match all 3 stats for the weapons to get perfect scaling synergy. Turning weapons into plus value weapons is ridiculously expensive, requiring you to dismantle tons of plus value equipment, so make sure you save your plus value equipment and don't normally dismantle them. Once you get far enough into the game and in the end game, you should start considering whether you want to plus value some equipment and min-max the reference stats. Some other additional miscellaneous tips on equipment before we get into skills. You can also set entire equipment sets via the shrine under preparations to make and play completely different playstyles on a whim, since every progression system in the game is resettable by distributing points. You should also enable auto pickup in the settings menu to avoid getting arthritis, and add more shortcuts in the settings menu for those of you who actually use consumables or plan on using Onmyo magic in your playthrough. Now moving on to skills. A brand new system you'll be using in Nioh 3 is the skills system, which is a completely separate system for martial arts trees that you access from any shrine. Skills are bonus passives which you unlock from secret skills texts found when you loot corpses or chests. There are 3 categories for skills: common skills, samurai skills, and ninja skills. As you can probably guess, samurai and ninja skills are passives for those specific styles, while common skills will give you more general buffs and passives. Especially powerful skills will be called mastery skills, which you can only equip one of at a time. Each category has a capacity limit, and every skill has a certain cost, so you'll be limited in how many you can equip at one time. However, you'll be able to increase the capacity for each category by finding relevant memorandums or texts in the map. You'll only be able to equip a few good skills for each category at any point in the game, so picking and choosing between the best passives is going to be key throughout your playthrough. There are a few early game skills which I would recommend you prioritize in the Warring States region. Awakening is a must-have if you're running an Onmyo magic build. For only a cost of 3, you get to reduce your starting animation for any Onmyo magic by around a second, which is huge for spellcasters. You'll unlock this once you complete the Way of the Onmyo Novus Battle Scroll quest upon visiting the Eternal Rift for the very first time. Supreme Parry recovers 150 life after you perform a burst break. This is a solid skill, especially in the early game where you don't have as much health yet. At level 50, this will be around 10% of your health restored on a burst break, which can top your health bar off and save you an elixir. You'll find this near the end of the Crucible in the center of the Warring States in a chest before the final Bodhisattva statue. Unshakable reduces damage taken by 10% while you're attacking. In my experience, most of the time when you do get hit by enemies is usually while you're mid-attack. Enemies could get up from a stagger faster than you expect, or have more attacks in a combo string that you don't know about. A 10% damage reduction for being caught off guard like that is a great skill to get some extra tankiness. You can find this at the start of the game in Tenru River, on a corpse on the side of the road near the large yokai with a staff. Oppressive Strength prevents stagger while using strong arts or martial arts while your arts proficiency is active. This skill is great for cases where you get hit by a small attack that completely cancels out your empowered attacks, and is especially great for martial arts infinites, where you can hold down a button as long as you like, since it allows you to do some pretty cheesy stuff. You'll find this a little later in the Warring States in Nioh in a chest west of the Great Ginkgo Approach Shrine. Armor Piercer is a ninja skill which increases your final blow and grapple damage by 15%. Grapples will be your bread and butter of combat, so getting a nice 15% damage boost to sometimes guarantee a kill or deal even more damage to a boss is a great buff. You can get this right out of spawn in Tenryu River by killing the Yamainu in the southern village, then using the dirty key it drops to unlock a hut with a chest containing the skill. Thrown Blade Counter is a solid skill which throws a free shuriken at your locked-on enemy when you evade. This can sometimes stagger enemies, and it only costs 3 to slot in, so it's just a solid pick. You'll find this in the eastern village of Hamamatsu in a chest right next to the Lesser Crucible. If you're interested in finding all of the secret skills or memorandums in the game easily, you can check out our interactive map that we have on the Nioh 3 wiki in order to find them. Moving on to an integral part of any Nioh title, we have Onmyo Magic and Soul Cores. Soul Cores are items occasionally dropped by enemies which you can equip to unlock their summon or their related Onmyo magic. Every enemy in the game has a chance to drop an unpurified Soul Core, which you must purify by praying at a shrine. If you don't purify it and you die, you'll lose the Soul Core. In the Onmyo box menu at the shrine, you'll have 2 options, the Yang position and the Yin position. Equipping a soul core in the Yang position will unlock the soul core's summoning item, so you'll be able to summon a yokai to throw attacks and then disappear. Soul cores in the Yin position will grant you an Onmyo magic item, which is typically a buff, debuff, or offensive spell. Summons and Onmyo magic are fully replenished with no additional cost when you rest at a shrine, so you can feel free to spam these as much as you like. Soul core set in the Yang position will also give you some stats assuming you meet a minimum amount of magic. For example, the Kamaitachi soul core gives plus wind damage if you set it in the Yang position with at least 11 magic, and reduces key dodge consumption if you have at least 15 magic. Yang soul cores will also grant you a set amount of attack and defense depending on the level of the core, so be mindful that your low-level cores will eventually have to be phased out or upgraded to a higher level. You'll later be able to upgrade your soul cores by performing resting rites to dismantle your unneeded soul cores, then enhance the ones you want to use, so keep your favorite soul cores even if they get out-phased by higher level ones. For those of you looking for a magic build, leveling up magic will unlock more Yin positions and get more slots for Onmyo magic. You'll have to get a set amount of magic to unlock each slot. Those thresholds are 7, 10, 15, 25, and 40 magic each. If you're not going for an Onmyo build, I would recommend only putting points into magic if you really want some specific stats for a soul core or are min-maxing. Otherwise, just put on a strong Yang soul core that you want to summon and leave it at that. For the Yin position, if you have some intellect in your build, you'll get bonus effect time on your Onmyo magic, so you can go for effect talismans that debuff your enemies or buff yourself. There are a few soul cores which I recommend looking out for in the early game. The Kamaitachi core. In Maisaka, east of the Maisaka Junction Shrine, you'll find the Kamaitachi, an open world boss who will drop the Kamaitachi core. This core is fantastic as a summon, dealing tons of damage in an AoE, and has decent stats on it as well, with bonus wind damage and reduced dodge key consumption. Sudama core. Right before the Crucible mission in Hamamatsu, you'll find a Sudama near the Hamamatsu Castle Town East Shrine. If you talk to any Sudama on the map, then click exchange and buy all their stuff for yokai tiers, they'll give you a Sudama core, which is a fantastic Yin position soul core. This soul core grants you ×8 thunderstorm shot talismans, which summons 3 strikes of lightning overhead in a vertical line, dealing massive damage for such an early game talisman. Definitely a missable one and a must-have one at the same time. We'll have a more extensive guide on the best soul cores once the game is fully released, but for now, these are 2 I want to shout out the most for the early game. As mentioned in the basic combat section, ninjutsu are 3 special ability slots in your ninja style, which recharge upon attacking enemies. These abilities can range from long-range attacks to physical attacks or even unique movements. You can equip ninjutsu from the customize option in the menu under the ninja style basic controls. You can unlock new ninjutsu by spending ninja points in the ninja skill tree or finding handbooks in the world or through missions. If you want to consider a full ninjutsu playstyle, then investing into skill will boost your ninjutsu damage while also boosting your arts damage in samurai form, so do consider that if you find yourself using ninja style more often than not. Once you complete the Way of the Ninja Novice after you unlock the Eternal Rift, you'll have a ton of good early game options for ninjutsu to get yourself started. There are a few good ninjutsu which I recommend early on, and they are as follows. Pinwheel Shuriken. This is a solid ninjutsu which throws out a large shuriken that rebounds to you, dealing double damage when hitting enemies on the back end of the rebound. If you press the ninjutsu again right as it returns to you, you'll get a free use up to 2 times. Paralysis Shuriken. If you throw enough of these at an enemy, it completely paralyzes them for around 3 seconds. Do note that against bosses, they'll build resistance for every time you paralyze them, so it will become harder and harder to do for each paralyze. Lightning Step. This is an instant gap closer or retreat button which can come in handy in many situations. Moving on from build customization, let's finally talk about the open world and the main path of the game. From the get-go, you're dropped into the Warring States map in Tenryu River, with the main quest a whole zone and a half away from you. You'll probably be confused about what you should be doing at this point, and you'll be confused again later when the next main quest wants you to go to the endgame area. For the entire game, you can just follow the recommended level of the zones as your ideal path throughout the game. In the Warring States, you'll just follow the loop of clearing a zone, leveling up, moving on to the next one, and so on until you finally reach the main quest. You'll also occasionally get battle scrolls, which are missions you access from the shrine that give you some special rewards. These are essentially the old style of Nioh levels for you veterans. When it comes to actually clearing the open world, let's go over the stuff you can find within it. Firstly, we have valuables. These include ninjutsu handbooks, secret skills text for your passive skills, texts and memorandums for your skill capacity, ninja and samurai locks for your martial arts tree, and other miscellaneous valuable items that may be related to quests. Next are shrines, which are your respawn points and build customization portals. Then there are your friendly yokai you can find throughout the map. Scampuses will make you follow them around for ninja or samurai locks. Chijiko want to be shot down and provide a transformed martial art, usually an elemental version of a martial art. And Kodama will give you Kodama merit and extra elixir capacity. You can spend Kodama merit at a shrine under the Blessings tab for elixir bonuses. Jizo are the same as Kodama, with their blessings focused on buffs while you're at the Crucible. Lastly, Sudama are little merchants that you can buy and sell items from, or exchange yokai teardrops for secret skills and crafting guides. Next on the map, you have Spirit Guardian Veins. These will appear as glowy areas on the ground or wall that let you traverse to a location which you may not be able to interact with immediately. As you progress through the main story, you'll unlock more Spirit Guardians, which unlock these traversal methods, not unlike a Metroidvania. Think Hollow Knight, where you go back to regions once you have new skills to get to a brand new area. Do note that you don't actually have to equip the related Spirit Guardian to access these areas, so you can equip whatever you want. In terms of combat areas, we have enemy bases, lesser crucibles, crucible spikes, and crucible wraiths. Enemy bases are just a collection of enemies in an area. Once you kill all the enemies, the place will be cleared. Sometimes these bases are a dark realm of yokai, and once you defeat all the enemies, some chests will be unlocked, so look out for that. Lesser crucibles are gauntlets of 3 to 5 waves of empowered enemies that give you corrosion on hit, meaning they take off a portion of your max health. Do note that your yokai summons do more damage here, and your living artifact will charge faster. Once you complete a lesser crucible, you destroy the related crucible spike, which then increases your spirit force cap, the orange bar resource for your spirit guardian skills, and you unlock more guardian spirit skills. Sometimes you can find crucible spikes just out in the open, not gated behind a crucible, so be on the lookout for those as well. Crucible Wraiths are empowered yokai on the map, which always drop the related soul core, enhance that type of soul core, and give you transformed arts. Lastly on the map, we have Masters, Myths, Hot Springs, and Nurikabes. Masters are duelers around the map that can be fought as a boss fight. They'll reward you with a transformed art and some good gear related to that dueler. Myths are your side quests. They'll take you to various spots on the map to complete some boss, kill some enemies, or collect some loot. I recommend picking these up as soon as you can, and commonly checking your map for new ones that appear after you do steps in the main quest. Next, hot springs are pretty simple. They're usually hidden areas that you can soak in to get some passive health regeneration for a bit, and get 2 yokai teardrops for Sudama trades. Lastly, Nurikabe are these fake walls that will start appearing near the end of the Warring States. You can get through them by either going around them and removing their seal, killing them, or doing the correct gesture. Each Nurikabe has a few gestures it will respond to. With all those map activities out of the way, I do have a bit of advice for when you're exploring the map. Firstly, always make sure to check for breakable objects that reveal a hidden path, such as pots or bamboos, which block some hole or entrance. These will usually block off valuable chests and items. When you see a well in an area, hit the rock on top of it to reveal either an item, a kappa, or an umibozu. I highly recommend using prayer beads with an Amrita sensor to see nearby valuables, and equipping the Shin Roku Guardian Spirit to see nearby scampuses, Kodama, and Chijiko on the map if you are a completionist. In terms of how much of the map you should do, getting to level 4 exploration level on all the zones is a solid goal for ensuring that you aren't underleveled or underprepared for the main quest. One last thing to cover on build customization are the best titles and Jizo/Kodama blessings. Titles will come naturally from just playing the game and will give you points to spend on 9 different categories, similar to Kodama or Jizo. The best points to spend will depend on your preferred playstyle, but in general, there are a few all-around decent options. I have put these up on the screen now and what they do so you can see them quickly. For Kodama blessings, I recommend going for Elixir Efficacy, then Drop Rate, then Spirit Force Bonus, Damage Taken, and Damage Dealt in that order. For Jizo blessings, I recommend prioritizing Life Corrosion Recovery, Drop Rate, Melee Damage, then Corrosion Recovery in that order. Try to spread out your points at any point in the game so you aren't sitting on a bunch of merit waiting for a final upgrade. The next thing I want to talk about, which is more personal advice rather than a guide, is how you actually want to be fighting enemies and bosses in this game. The playstyles you can adapt in this game are really preferential, and you can play what you feel comfortable with and have a completely different experience to another player. That being said, I do think there are some universal things anyone can apply to their gameplay to make their life easier. Firstly, switching between ninja and samurai mode will always depend on the enemy you're fighting. Sometimes you want the extra defense, and other times you need that extra mobility. Typically what I found works is using ninja mode for big bosses to dodge the unknown large AoE attacks and getting behind them for a bunch of damage, and samurai mode for practically any other enemy, as it tends to do more damage. Ninja mode does a bunch of key damage, but will really only do real damage if you're hitting the enemy from the back. For bosses, though the game feels like a hack and slash, you can't just treat the bosses as such. You may be tempted to just go crazy on a boss at all times, but the game does demand a lot of patience and timing from the player for many bosses in the game. There are some actually tough bosses later on that require Dark Souls level patience from you. So while enemies are pretty easily demolished in the open world, just note that for major bosses, you'll have to adjust your playstyle and try to play a bit more patiently. Getting a boss's key meter down will be your priority if possible, and spamming them with attacks in ninja mode when their key meter is 0 is perfect for getting big chunks of damage. Once you get the max key bar to 0, you should grapple and keep in mind any wake-up attacks the bosses may have. Once you get bosses low enough, some have Dark Realm phases that are just ridiculous and leave absolutely no window for attacks. In these scenarios, I recommend just going to ninja mode and dodging around like crazy until they get out of it. The game will teach you to press your advantage smartly and humble you if you treat it like a cakewalk. The last thing we're going to cover as we begin to close this encyclopedia of a guide is basic multiplayer features, which will apply to you even if you're a single-player person. Firstly, you'll notice blue graves as you explore the open world, and if you're online, these will typically be other players. These are called benevolent graves, which you can summon using a Choco Cups to get an AI to help you out. You can spawn your own benevolent grave using Righteous Jasper for other people to interact with. If they win with your graves, you'll get a Choco Cups and Glory as a reward from the boons option in the shrine menu, so it's worthwhile to do so. You can also defeat Revenants, the red graves, for a Choco Cups and Glory. You unfortunately cannot co-op in the open world, but you can co-op in missions to get equipment guaranteed at your level, as well as a Choco Cups and Glory. So what is Glory actually for? Once you get to a certain point in the game, you'll unlock clans, which provide you buffs based on your standing, which increases the more Glory you earn. You'll also be able to spend Glory on items, but that will be available much later in the game. So that wraps up our beginner guide for Nioh 3. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This is a very complex game that you don't have to go into all the depth if you're having a good time and things are going easily for you. But if you're struggling, there can be a lot of simple things that you maybe didn't read in a menu or that you might have glanced over and you weren't really paying attention that can get you into a hard place. And we aim to clear some of those things up here while also giving you some other tips. And remember as well, we do have a section in the description that has each section for you. So if there's something you want to refresh your memory on after watching this video, you can skip to that section and watch it again to get the help you need. Stay tuned as we have more Nioh 3 content coming to the channel, including more helpful guides with tips and build guides for you to learn and master.